Imagine a coastline in the tropics or subtropics. What comes to mind is a coral reef and probably a sandy beach. But nearby, there's another ecosystem that's often overlooked, yet may be even more important to the health of the whole area. It's called a mangrove forest.
Hi everyone, my name is Renee Crawford.
Subject today is geography, and the topic is coastal ecosystem. Under the subtopic of degradation and preservation of mangroves, and our grade is grade 10 target group from age 15 to 16, and this is supposed to span over an hour and 30 minutes, can be less, depends on how fast the students learn, cooperate, and understand the content.
At the end of this class, students should be able to first understand what mangrove ecosystem and their uses are, able to outline the different types of mangroves and their characteristics, able to state key factors that affect mangroves themselves, and able to show why mangroves are important to sustainable development and why we need to protect them.
Mangroves. What are mangroves? Mangroves are salt-tolerant trees that grows in shallow tidal water of some coastal areas. Mangrove forests cannot withstand freezing temperatures. Therefore, they grow in tropical and subtropical latitudes near the equator. So, like countries and regions like in the Caribbean and off the coast of Mexico and Florida are the best place for them to grow. They grow in slow water currents and plenty of fine organic sediments to set their roots, as well as protection from strong wave energy. The murky water are rich in nutrients from decaying leaves and wood, which make it an attractive area for fishes and other organisms seeking food and shelters from predators. The mangroves also help in stabilizing the coastline by reducing coastal erosion from storm surges, ocean currents, and wave tides. The degradation and preservation of mangroves. So, as we continue this topic, we are learning that mangrove forests are highly protected ecosystem with rates of primary production equal to those of tropical humid evergreen forests, sorry. They accumulate carbon in trees' biomass, and most of this carbon is lost by decomposition and export to adjacent ecosystem. Mangroves play a key role in human sustainability and livelihood, being heavily used for food, timber, fuel, and medicine. Also, mangroves are one of the most human coastal ecosystem. Despite their important social and ecological roles, they are regressing at an alarming rate due to a direct anthropogenic impact and global change. After decades of devastation, these forests continue facing different processes of conversion, threatening their global future. There are many different species of mangroves, and a common mangrove can grow up to about 9 meters, which is 30 feet tall. The leaves are 5 to 15 centimeters, which is 2 to 6 inches long, opposite, oval, or elliptical in shape, and smooth edged. They are thick, have leathery surfaces, and are borne on short stem. Today we'll be focusing on Jamaica mangrove ecosystem. As it relates to Jamaica, like many small island and developing states, is at risk for coastal hazards due to its exposure to tropical storms high level of coastal development, vulnerable coastal communities, degradation of coastal ecosystems, and the predicted impact of climate change. In Jamaica, mangroves are the first line of defense, acting as a natural barriers, mitigating flooding by reducing wave energy and slowing down storm surges and mudflats. The types of mangroves in Jamaica. There are over 80 different species of mangroves. However, there are only four types of mangroves found in Jamaica. You have the red mangrove, the black mangrove, and the white mangrove. Also, the bottom mangrove, all with different and unique characteristics.
Hi guys, this is Gregory and Duncan. I'll be explaining the types of mangroves. As said before, there are four main types of mangroves found in Jamaica. I hope that you guys will find this as informative and interesting as I do. First, we look at red mangroves. These are found on the relatively flat areas of the coastal zone. They are found at the water's edge and are usually flooded at high tide. They are easily identified by their tall arching roots called prop roots, which extend from trees and trunk of the plant. These roots are reddish in color, thus the name red mangrove, and they are adapted to air transport by underground roots which are covered with water, and these provide extra support to anchor the tree in soft soil. Here is a picture of the red mangrove, and we obviously see the color, thus the name. We now look at black mangroves. These are found further inland at higher elevations, which are flooded only in high tide times. Trees are surrounded by nematophores. Again, the black mangrove trees are surrounded by nematophores. These are stick-like structures growing from underground roots. Like the props of the red mangroves, these structures transport air to the underground roots, which are often saturated with water. Here again is a picture of the black mangrove, thus the name. White mangroves are found at higher elevations. Now, if you look at it, the further inland you go, the color changes. The red mangrove are at the low elevation, then the black mangrove at relatively high elevations, and then the white mangroves, which are at higher elevations. They are easily identified by two pumps at the base of each leaves, which gets rid of excess salt. White mangrove may have nematophores and or prop roots depending on how much the soil is soaked with water. Most plants have neither root structure. White mangrove produces greenish white flowers and small fruit which is dry, leathery and ribbed. The fruit contains a dark red seed which can float to new growing sites. And here we see the reproductive support of the tree with its environment, because this tree produces a fruit, a seed, and it is transported to new growing sites via the water that is there. And here we see a picture of the white mangrove with the roots. Now we look at bottom mangroves. These are found much further inland and is not flooded, not even at high tide. Here we see a big difference again. This type of mangrove is found further inland and does not get flooded by high tide. The button part of the name comes from the button like appearance of the dense, rounded flower head that grow in a branched cluster with a purplish green, round cone like fruit. Here again, we see that the button mangrove and the white mangrove have some similarities as they produces fruits. This type of mangrove is in the same family as the white mangrove and is often considered only an associate of mangroves, and we can see why. It has no prop roots nor nematophores. It is shrubby when found along the shore, but takes on a tree form when further inland. Here we see pictures of the button mangrove. On the left, in 4A, we see the entire plant. Of course, we can take a further look on the leaves. We see some white structures. And to 4B, we can see the fruits that it produces.
Degradation of mangroves in Jamaica. The major issue affecting wetlands generally result from lack of recognition of the wide range of benefits it provides, such as ecological, economic, and scientific. Currently, mangroves in Jamaica are threatened by extraction for their timber, pollution, land reclamation, which include draining and filling, reduced flood controls, fire, disruption of wildlife, fishing or shrimp usage, and small-scale farming. As it relates to timber cutting, the wetlands that provide wood for making charcoal, fish pots, and to a lesser extent, rocks for oyster farming. It relates to pollution. Pollutants directly affecting mangroves include garbage, sewage, industrial waste, mainly from sugar factories and oil spills. In addition to wetlands, are subjected to indirect effects of contamination from substances that are transported from storm surge and rainfall from urban areas, as well as agrochemical nutrients and other materials used in agriculture that are released into streams and rivers that eventually end up into wetland areas, and large-scale pumping from coastal aquifers which affect the water balance, inducing saltwater intrusions. Reclamation. Over the past few years, the increase in demand for dwelling space and the cost of land has increased. And this has led to building of extensive communities on cheaper dump-up land as one means of providing affordable housing. Wetlands destruction have also been caused by draining of land for agricultural use. The extensive tracts of wetlands in Jamaica have been drained for the planting of rice and other moisture-tolerant crops, as well as for cultivation of sugarcane. Wetland destruction have been shortened to the resulting loss of fishery resources, example in the Hunts Bay Kingston Harbour system. Students, for your homework, from the list that we were just discussing as it relates to the degradation of mangroves in Jamaica, the ones that were not discussed, I want you to choose two of them and write two ways in which mangroves in Jamaica are affected by these.
Good morning and good day. My name is Jonathan Thomas, and I'll be doing benefits of mangroves. Mangroves are very important commercially and provide many benefits to the environment. The importance of mangroves include stabilizing shorelines, build up land, flood protection, protect the coral reef, recycle nutrients, act as natural sewage treatment plants, provide home and shelter for fish. They also serve as a home for many other animals. In the case of stabilizing shorelines, mangrove roots collect silt and sediments that tides carry in and rivers carry out towards the sea. By holding the soil in place, the trees stabilize shorelines against erosion. Seedlings that take root on sandbars help stabilize the sandbars over time and may eventually create small islands. As a result of this, a barrier is created which acts as a buffer between the sea and the coastline. With the creation of this buffer, there is a reduction in the chances of coastal flooding to occur. Buffer will reduce the destructive forces of these waves and the gale force winds of storms by absorbing the water and energy. As it relates to the protection of coral reefs, mangroves trap sediments from land runoff, thereby reducing the amount of sediments reaching the sensitive coral reef. As a result, siltation would not occur. Should siltation occur, the coral reef will die and a number of aquatic species will be affected. These organisms are also responsible for the recycling of nutrients. Mangroves play a very important role in the food web. The rotting leaves of mangroves provide food for bacteria and fungus. The rotting plants, material, soil, water, fungus, and bacteria makes up detritus, pronounced detritus. This provides food for marine organisms such as crab, shrimps, and oysters, which later become food for other organisms in the ocean and eventually become food for human beings. Mangroves also act as a natural sewage treatment plant. They absorb nutrients such as nitrates and phosphates found in sewage, making it safe to flush in the sea. In large amounts, these nutrients can harm organisms in the ocean because it results in the proliferation of algae. With the proliferation of algae in the ocean, there is a reduction in dissolved oxygen. With the reduction in dissolved oxygen, coral reefs will die and other organisms in the ocean in which need this oxygen will also die. Mangrove ecosystems are a home and shelter for many aquatic organisms. They even use them as a nursery. Many fishes, including those of commercial importance, spend part of their life cycles here during breeding and spawning, because the area can be used to protect them from larger predators. Besides the benefits listed ahead, it is very critical and important to maintain and preserve our mangroves because they aid in sustainable development. The preservation and protection of mangroves is important because it can aid in the fulfillment of many of our sustainable development goals. However, the sustainable development goal that mangrove ecosystems are directly linked to is Goal 14: conserve and sustainably use the ocean, seas, and marine resources for sustainable development. However, this is not the only goal that mangrove ecosystems seem to aid. It also aids in Sustainable Development Goal 1 and 2, which are poverty and hunger. The sustainable harvest of mangrove products for market sales can create valuable businesses for local communities and small-scale food producers, in particular women, indigenous people, family farmers, pastoralists, and fishers. Moreover, local income opportunities can be created through the creation of management and planning jobs involved in the restoration projects. As a direct result of this, we see an economy being formed. This economy is able to feed many persons around the world, especially in Jamaica, especially fishermen. These areas around the mangrove ecosystem is where many of Jamaica's fishers usually fish because there are many sanctuaries that are found in these areas. By the preservation of mangroves, the United Nations by 2030 seeks to build the resilience of the poor and those in vulnerable situations and reduce their exposure and vulnerability to climate-related extreme events and other economic, social, and environmental shocks and disasters. They also seek to use these types of ecosystems to end hunger and ensure access by all people, in particular the poor and people in vulnerable situations, including infants, to safe, nutritious, and sufficient food all year round. The United Nations also seeks to use mangrove ecosystems to address SDG 8, SDG 13, and SDG 15. These are ensure livelihoods and economic growth, taking action against climate change impacts, and halting biodiversity loss, respectively. As I stated earlier, mangrove ecosystems provide an economy. So by 2030, the United Nations wants to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including for young people and persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal work. Mangrove ecosystems provide a job, you're able to obtain the necessary resources from the environment to be able to provide a living for your family. As I stated earlier, mangrove ecosystems provide an economy. So by 2030, the United Nations wants to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including for young people and persons with disabilities, and equal pay for work of equal work. Mangroves ecosystems provide a job. You're able to obtain the necessary resources from the environment to be able to provide a living for your family. As it relates to SDG 13, which is tackling the impacts of global climate change, mangrove forests are high efficient carbon sinks. This means the ecosystem is allowed to trap carbon from being emitted into the atmosphere or reduce the amount of carbon that is in the atmosphere. With a reduction of carbon in the atmosphere or an increase of carbon in the atmosphere, you affect global temperatures or global climates. Carbon is a greenhouse gas. This means that it allows for the trapping of heat in the upper atmosphere of the earth. With an increase in the upper atmosphere of the earth, there is many side effects. One is sea level rise. Another is the increase in the intensity of natural disasters, specifically storms. Over the last few years, there has been a number of Category 5 storms being registered in the Caribbean. Thankfully, none have affected Jamaica as yet. With the increase in the intensity of these storms, natural disasters have become more dangerous and the cost of repairs have increased exponentially. By 2030, the United Nations seeks to strengthen the resilience and adaptive capacity to climate resilient hazards and natural disasters in all countries. As I mentioned previously, mangrove ecosystems are habitats to a lot of animals and endemic species and aquatic species in the natural environment. With the degradation of these ecosystems, many of these animals will be lost. Some may become extinct or be affected by natural disasters when they come to the region. So in order for this not to occur, these areas need to be conserved and protected. The rules of the Jeopardy game are as follows. Two teams will be selected and a coin toss will determine who goes first. There are three categories with points ranging from 100 to 400. When a team selects a category, the team members who wish to answer the question must hit the buzzer and wait to be acknowledged for their response. If anyone answers without being acknowledged, the question will be passed to the next team and you lose the amount of points allocated for the question.
What are mangroves? The answer is tropical plants that are adapted to loose, wet soil, salt water, and being periodically submerged by tides. Next question. What is the word used to describe the water found in these mangrove ecosystems? The answer is brackish. Define a wetland or mangrove ecosystem. The answer is a wetland is a distinct ecosystem that is flooded by water either permanently or seasonally, where oxygen-free processes prevail. How many different types of mangroves are found in Jamaica, and name them all? Four different types of mangroves are found in Jamaica. They are the red, black, white, and button mangrove. What percent of Jamaica's mangrove ecosystems have been lost in recent years? The answer is 30%. Name any two natural factors that have led to the degradation of Jamaican mangrove forests. Climate change due to sea level rise, hurricane and storms, and fires. Change in the pH of water bodies around the ecosystem, and erosion. Name any two anthropogenic factors that have led to the degradation of Jamaican mangrove forests. Please note that any two out of these four is accepted. Charcoal harvesting, overfishing, tourism development industry, and agriculture. Name two ways to prevent the degradation of mangroves. The following answers are accepted. Limit not agricultural practices, overfishing, tourism activities, replant mangrove seedlings, try to make more sustainable decisions to combat climate change, proper recycling methods, and to reduce oil disposal. Next question. Name any three important use of mangrove ecosystems. Any three of these four is accepted. The answers are breeding site for aquatic and some terrestrial animals, habitat for wildlife flora and fauna, for shoreline protection, provide jobs and food for many families and individuals. Next question. Which sustainable development goals is mangrove ecosystem directly linked to? The answer is Sustainable Development Goal number 14, which says conserve and sustainably use oceans, seas, and marine resources. Next question. Name any other three sustainable development goals in which mangrove ecosystems address. Any three of these four is accepted. The answers are elimination of poverty, goal number 1, zero hunger, goal number 2, economic growth, goal number 8, climate action, goal number 13, life on land, goal number 15. Next question. Name the organization that is responsible for Sustainable Development Goals. The answer is the United Nations.